I'm Nick Westergaard, and this is On Brand, helping you tell your story. We often hear that you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but NéAndré Broussard knows that the cover is actually where the story begins. After a career in financial services, NéAndré founded Black Menswear and BMW Digital to do more than just change clothes. He's changing the conversation around the African American male consumer. His work is rooted in building community, economic growth, and the quiet power of a well-tailored story. My interview with NéAndré is coming right up, but first... NéAndré Broussard, welcome to On Brand.
Thank you, Nick. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
So I have to say, with this being a video podcast now and talking to someone about menswear, I did think twice before putting on just my usual uniform of one of my, 10 cashmere sweaters from the drawer, so I don't have to think. So I'm hoping that I'm not too far afoul of things.
You look good. I like the color on you as well. It also accentuates the background. So you did right there. Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
I wasn't fishing for compliments, but I feel like I've gotten them as well. So thank you.
Yes,
So
sir.
I want you to tell a bit about, because your story is really interesting, about what led you to found the businesses that you have today. So I wonder if you'd take us back, walk us through.
Yeah. So initially, we started Black Menswear as truthfully a platform to elevate the perception of Black men internally. Right. The way that the media portrayed us to our community was one that was definitely one that would keep you in a mental cloud about positivity and about optimism within you as a community. And so what started as an online platform where I just wanted to put out so many positive images of Black men that young Black boys would see themselves in a more positive way, and they walk a little bit straighter up, right? Um, well, that turned into a community, a safe space for well achieving or desirous Black men that are like, oftentimes they're in rooms and they're the only ones that look like them. That became their safe space to be able to meet other like-minded individuals. We took that and turned that into it's called traveling flash mob, which then allowed those guys to go off the internet and meet each other in real life. We were galvanizing men to find their tribe, find their safe space. And one of the most important and powerful things about these safe spaces was the conversations that I heard as I facilitated these and were there amongst these men. They're like, man, I just never been in a room with so many brothers that look like me, that had the same ambitions as me. And then you started seeing connections being made. You started seeing that the mentor was meeting the mentee. You started seeing that the influencer was meeting the next up and comer. You started to see just that the individuals that own businesses were meeting nonprofit owners, were meeting venture capitalists, were meeting all these people that this network that they didn't typically have access to was now accessible to them. And then that really, hearing those conversations, that really fueled the thing of, okay, this is actually greater than what we thought initially, just to visually represent us in a more positive light, turned into a safe space for brothers to actually grow and develop together, which then kind of shifted into the agency perspective of, well, we have these guys that are here, these guys that are influencers, content creators that are coming to be a part of this. But you also have people that are entrepreneurs and business owners that are also looking at this like, well, how did you build this community? How did you get these guys to come from this city to this city and travel together and now built this ecosystem? How were you able to do that in an authentic manner? And that's truly what turned our business model into a community first approach to top of the funnel engagement, right? We take the same secret sauce that we had of doing in real life experiences with a digital footprint and just developing a safe space for conversations, and then doing that same thing for brands and authentic community first approaches to campaigns.
You said something that got me thinking there. You were talking about clothing and conversations around that and changing how people see one another and also see themselves.
Yeah.
In my intro, I think I made the, don't judge a book by its cover, but we do.
Yeah, we do.
But I also lately have been talking a lot about the stories that we tell ourselves. And I think there's something interesting too with our clothing, what we choose, how we carry ourselves, and how we feel about ourselves. And that's about
Yeah.
as far as I can get with the question, because this is not my area of expertise. But I wonder if you could take the baton and I feel like there's a really strong point there. I mean, we, there's so many cliche business, dress for success and everything else, but I think
Yeah.
there's something much deeper going on too.
So there's a concept called enclothed cognition, right? So enclothed cognition is based on what you wear, it actually increases your cognitive ability. And the study that they did was it was test taking. So they took tests in, let's say, joggers, and then you dressed up and as if you were going to get a loan from the bank. You dressed up full suit and took the same test. Questions were similar questions, but performance was higher based on how the person was dressed. And that study is because when you look at yourself and you see yourself in the mirror one way or the other, you feel better about yourself, and that actually helps to bring out things in your memory. That helps you to walk with a little bit more confidence. It helps you to feel as though you're ready to tackle the day. And so that mindset actually is a truthful concept when you think about what you wear actually helps you to go through at least now, the man inside the suit is also a requirement, right? You have to be a solid person. But when you think about if you look yourself in the mirror and you're proud of what you see, you walk out with your head higher. Your confidence level for that day is going to match the efforts that you're going to put out, hopefully. And so that concept is a very important one. And when you think about, and I think about young men who put their first suit on for prom or to church or something like that, and they look at themselves in the mirror and they like, their shoulders go back and the
Yeah.
pride comes forth, and you just have a different sense and feel about yourself. And that helps to really drive and grow people just based on the confidence that you have in yourself. You exude that, and that actually opens more opportunities for you.
Enclothed cognition. I love that. See, you speak in my language because you actually had the science to go along with that as well. I've told this story on the podcast before, but like you, I'm kind of a professional plate spinner with lots of different things going on. I've got the podcast. I teach at the University of Iowa. I write. I do a lot of speaking. And for a while, a plate that I kept spinning in there was being a consultant. And it was the plate I enjoyed doing the least, but it was one um, that provided some income.
Yeah.
So it was something that a plate I just kind of kept spinning, didn't love doing. Um, and a couple of years back, it outside of my control started to wind itself down. And I was having this kind of identity crisis of, even though it wasn't something I loved doing, I didn't like that I wasn't controlling how it was ending.
Mm. Mhm.
And one of the big things that helped was I realized that for this consulting work, just the history of it and what I was doing, I dressed differently. And I wore shoes that weren't comfortable. I wore shirts that were very buttoned up. I used to have a tie, but I dropped that. And jackets.
Yes.
And so it really, I felt that disconnect because I felt like I was dressing up for something that I wasn't anymore.
Mm.
So something that helped me to find that path out of that and kind of through that as well was I don't have to dress up anymore. I don't have to put on the business consultant costume. And it did make me feel better.
I think with that one, the control that you had there, I think that's more along the lines of the empowering yourself, right? You being empowered to be able to make that choice and to make that decision, while at the same time being able to render yourself a new costume, right? I like to say one thing about the suit becomes like a superhero costume when I go back to my days in financial services, right? In sales, I was a young man who ran a region. And for me as a young man, it's always difficult when you think about being young in an industry, but you have the knowledge, you have to consistently prove yourself. And for me, um, I had to prove myself less when I was in my suit and tie. When I walked in that room, they automatically were like, "Oh, you're the teacher today? Okay, I like the suit you got on." And that for me helped to have a little to boost my confidence a little bit more and like relieve the nerves because I'm already on a level playing field because I look the best in the room. And and so that was kind of one of those things that I learned. Now, granted, that wasn't financial services. Financial services is an industry, banking, finance, insurance. Most of
Right.
those individuals are wearing some sort of a suit attire, business attire. And so in that regard, it's like, all right, well, if they're here, I want to be here. And so I knew, immediately understood though the power of how that helped me to rise to the top in regards to being the leader in the room. So that way, as I go and I train, the guard is down from the individuals that I'm training. They just receive the information a little bit clearer and quicker, more concise, and it helped in that former sales role that I was in with growing that. But I do think it is one of those things that we talk about. We have community programs, or we've spoken at um, uh, uh, Dillard University in New Orleans, Louisiana. We've spoken at Florida Memorial University, the students at HBCU campuses, and we talk about the fact that there are times and there are situations and places where you need to be dressed appropriately for the route that you're trying to take. And so there are some instances when you think about that, um, you have to wear the costume to get into the room to get the job. And then as you get further along into the industry and you become a little bit more comfortable, you then are now afforded yourself a little bit more flexibility to decide on whether or not you want to stay in the industry or stay in the costume that you have to be in.
You talk about financial services, and it makes me think of I think the famous example of that is Steve Jobs and his own appearance transformation throughout the
Yeah.
years. But
Yes.
when shaved and put a suit on, he famously said, "Banks don't like beards." And
Yeah. Yeah.
On Brand will be right back after this. Now back to the show. So we talk about, you talk about cultural impact and leading a cultural impact agency, and that work is so important, built on day to day decisions. How do you decide which brands are actually ready to do the work of purposeful storytelling versus, I would imagine that there is a decent sized category of folks looking for the quick win here.
Yeah, a lot of that comes back to the relationships that we're able to build with the teams that we're working with. One of the things that we often say is when you look at a campaign, a true campaign, the hero of the campaign is going to be the recipient of the message. So the person sitting there, not the brand, not the influencer that we're going to have as a part of the campaign, is that the person sitting there can see themselves and visualize themselves as the person in the campaign, then that's the win. Now that takes time to actually find out and make that authentic versus throwing something against the wall and seeing what sticks. And so when we start these relationships with our brand partners, and understand, got to understand the metrics, the KPIs, what they're trying to go to, and then allowing us to actually strategize. All right, well, if you're trying to increase consumerism in this particular market, we like to look at adjacent industries that have high um, uh, over indexing, right? To where it doesn't have to be straight of here's my product, like the product, use the product. It's more along the lines of, man, I'm an entrepreneur and I wake up every morning and before I get my day started, like all you other entrepreneurs, first thing I do is I listen to this. Listening to this helped me. By the way, I'm provided the ability to listen to this through this brand partner, right? It's just a different way
Yeah.
to have that conversation. One of the things I learned early on, and we take this into the business with us, is that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so when we can help a brand to have an authentic conversation with the client through different formats, right? Is that a in real life experience where we have a client come into a footprint and all the visuals represent where they grew up, right? Those are just small things that it just takes a little bit more time to think about. How do we make this synergistic with the client versus, all right, this is our product. Let's just put our product all over the place. People don't, like I say, people don't really care about products anymore. They care about brand alignment. They care about the fact that they can see what the brand is doing in the community
Yes.
a lot of times, and so just really being able to understand that takes a little bit more time. Now there are some brands that don't want to take that time, and that's quite all right. There's some brands, everybody isn't a fit for everybody, but having authentic conversations, helping the brand sit down and talk with them about how do we make this authentic to the consumer. If they understand that, it's likely we're going to win with the campaign.
Well, and that authenticity starts someplace that you noted, and I want to call it out and repeat it again because it's so important in talking about brand storytelling. I think people even hear that label and think, "Oh, it's the story of our brand." And what you said too,
Yeah,
it is
yeah,
the
yeah.
story of the consumer, of the
Yes,
customer, and the
yes,
authenticity comes from that quote you said
yeah,
of showing and knowing how much you care about their life to be able
yes,
to world build in a way that aligns with who they are as well.
yes, yes. I would say, and if it's okay for me to bring an example into
Sure.
fold. So we've been working with Woodford Reserve now for the last 4 years around Kentucky Derby,
Nice.
and the we kind of have we had a tester 4 years ago, and then this is our third year of going into a tour with them. So this tour was started around Derby 150, so 2 years ago. Um, we sat with Woodford and we talked about that the fact that they wanted to now as the title sponsor for the Kentucky Derby, they wanted to show that Derby is actually a rather inclusive experience. It's not just
Hmm.
for the elite.
Yeah.
And so with tapping into our audience, what we did was we did a Road to Derby tour that actually highlighted the Black jockey experience as a part of the Kentucky Derby experience and the Kentucky Derby history. Because a lot of people don't know that the first winner of the Kentucky Derby was a black jockey. 11 of the first 13 horses that lined up had black jockeys riding in them 150 years ago. And so, with that history, that allowed us to create a connection with the African American, the upwardly mobile African American community that we were bringing this tour experience to across these four markets. So now these individuals are going in there, they're having this exclusive experience. They're seeing historical images of people that look like them as a part of the Kentucky Derby history. They're learning how to make their favorite Kentucky Derby drink through their partner Woodford Reserve. They're learning what food pairs with that. They're having a fashion moment to where they can rip the runway. So they came in their own Derby inspired outfits, and then we capture this content and tell this story. And so now these individuals have a close knit relationship with Woodford Reserve. So if they ever go and drink a Kentucky Mule or an Old Fashioned or a Derby Spire, well, the beverage that they're gonna go for and request is going to be Woodford Reserve because they have that connectivity. Woodford showed them that it's bigger than just the drinks and the horse racing; it's about the community connectivity. And so for that campaign, which again we're going into our third tour for this year's Derby 152, that campaign has really spoken to the community that they wanted to tap into in an authentic manner. We could have easily said, hey, go buy the drink, but that wouldn't have hit the same way. We provided an in-person experience. We provided online storytelling through social media, really highlighting these events. We did a documentary that we released around the Black Jockey and the Black Louisville experience, and just all of these tie points to really just be able to understand that it's bigger than, it's more than what the brand is. It's really about how the consumer feels, and feels seen, feels heard, and feels empowered.
I love that example. I'm so glad you brought that up. I'm going to out myself for social media stalking my podcast guests, but I believe I saw some Derby Day fits on your LinkedIn that
Yes.
that
Yes.
were pretty awesome. So you describe content as real and raw, and it's one of those things that a lot of times people think that they want, but many are much more comfortable with safe and
Yeah.
polished.
Yes.
So how do you either close that gap or move another direction?
Um, the hardest thing to do as a strategist is to realize that your strategy does not fit for the client.
Yeah.
Truthfully, right? Because you spend so much time and you do all the research and you go through all the touch points, and it could literally just be preference, preference of where the brand is trying to go, or if the brand has done 4 different campaigns this year that had one through line, and now this campaign is slightly off. The strategy of this is slightly differing from that. It might just not be the right time. I'm very much a no, maybe not now kind of person. And there are times where you have to step away and just let things marinate and fester. But it comes also back to relationships. The right time, that person's going to come knocking. The right time, you're going to come to the forefront of their mind. They're going to be reminded of, oh, you know what? Let's call so and so. They're the ones that they did this for us. Where they presented an idea that didn't quite fit at that time. And so that's one of those things where you should feel okay with walking away at times.
Yeah.
But practice. It's also practice, right? It's another time that you got to present a new concept, a new perspective, a new vantage point that also then you have as additional arrows in the quiver that you might be able to pull out for another client down the line, just because you've already kind of ideated and thought things through. So it might be a tough decision, but sometimes it's necessary in order to continue moving forward.
So you mentioned creators and influencers earlier, and a lot of times these are groups that are on the opposite side of the table, and there's different economic outcomes, but you talk a lot about economic growth
Yeah.
for creators. How does prioritizing the creator's bank account build a stronger brand for the client?
Well, truthfully, right? A lot of times we see that that's all. That broker point is all negotiation, and a
Right.
brand has an idea in their mind, and the creator knows what they're worth. And for us, it's really about helping the brand to understand the value of that creator, because a lot of times they don't. They just think, okay, this person has XYZ followers. We're going to pay them this because they have XYZ followers. But there's a lot that goes into that NIL association that brands don't necessarily take into consideration, right? They'll look at it and say, well, this person wants too much. It's like, does the person really want too much? Or does that person value themselves appropriately? And you should actually give them that budget, because the campaign is going to be bigger than the likes and the clicks.
Yeah.
The campaign is going to be more along the association of the community that they have. And then you also have to think about, like, what we see from a creator marketplace now is really what they used to see around brand endorsements when you put Jordan with Nike early on, right? There's that connectivity that is kind of removing itself from television, traditional forms of advertising, and is now being put into the power of these creators and influencers who have influence on their audiences.
Right.
And so one thing that we try to do often is reduce the one-offs, because the one-offs don't necessarily get that brand recognition that the brand feels like they're paying for. Let's find a way to make this a mini series or episodic, so that way you have multiple touch points with that individual and their audience, which kind of comes back to this thing about authenticity, right? Okay, if this person talks about this brand multiple times, it must be real, versus, you know, oh, there's another brand that's popped up on this person's timeline. And so the importance of understanding the value that these individuals bring is something that I think that brands are they're getting through it. I know one of the things that we often, when we do larger campaigns, we're bringing in multiple people and we're actually looking at how we can add plus ups to it. Sometimes that additional dollar comes from different departments, because that department might be able to leverage, well, if we can use this person for a story that's internal, maybe we can utilize, internal HR dollars. And then we have this person that wants to do this part of the campaign. But we had a traditional media budget, but now we're looking at how we can put this person on different advertising. I might go towards the media spend budget. So there's different ways that we can do that to find, and in some instances, find the money. But depending on who that person is and being able to see that person's value, it can go way further than just how many followers that they have and their engagement rate.
I can tell you're really good, much better than me on the consulting front, because the explaining of that, I think, is really important. Because even using the Jordan Nike example, because I think that with creators, the example that we reach for a lot is, hey, they're the traditional media, and remember all the money that they got. And I don't think that has a lot of great associations for businesses either.
Yeah.
Whereas if you say, yes, landmark GOAT basketball talent, but that he's the influencer that you're building a close relationship with,
Yeah.
and the value that delivered for both parties, I think explains the brand creator role and potential in a better way than
Right.
than a lot of those other examples. Well, I have smiled several times throughout this conversation. You've mentioned some brands we just did with Jordan, but what is a brand, NéAndré, that's made you smile recently?
I'll have to say a brand that's made me smile recently, and it's just like a lot of the timeliness, would actually have to be Spectrum. So Spectrum, through our partners that we have, we were able to do a campaign that focused on 5 Black-owned businesses that are, we say, built from the ground up, based here in Dallas, Texas. And I say that it really made me proud, because we're in a political and economic environment that has we've seen a stark decline in representative campaigns during, one specifically during Black History Month, but throughout the year, of campaigns that empower underrepresented groups. And with this, Spectrum allowed us to do a campaign, and it was a very well thought out 5-part series. We had the wonderful Tashara Parker, who's a former 5-time Emmy winning journalist, as a part of the campaign, sit down one-on-one and talk with individuals from different businesses, different backgrounds, different perspectives, based here in Dallas, though, who are doing amazing things, opening doors for others. And just being able to do that and still tell those kind of stories, because the impact that these individuals are having needs to be shared and needs to be told. And so kudos to Spectrum for allowing that. That we built this campaign to go on this month. Like I said, we just finished it, wrapping up with it tomorrow is the last day of the month. And very excited about that. The traction that's on that program is amazing, because I think people are still seeking real, authentic stories that represent their community. So I have to. Spectrum has made me smile over this last month and a half.
Awesome. Great story. Great smile. Well, as I mentioned earlier, you are juggling a lot of different things. Where can we send folks to learn more about who you are and what you do?
They can go to blackmenswear.com. That is the hub for all storytelling that we do. There they can see information on me, see information on my team, They can follow us on all social platforms at Black Menswear. We're right around 1 million followers collectively through Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. And YouTube. Definitely go visit our YouTube channel. Check out the Check-In with Black Menswear podcast, where I have the fortunate privilege of being the host, where I sit down one-on-one with individuals that tell their stories, and then also just continue to pour into the community by being able to hear from like-minded individuals and people that represent where a lot of the members of my audience come from. So definitely tap into that on our YouTube channel as well.
Awesome. Well, you can also find this entire conversation on YouTube also, but we're going to link up to everything that you mentioned at onbrandpodcast.com. NéAndré Broussard, thanks for being on brand with us.
Thank you, Nick, for having me, and I can't wait to see this episode.
On Brand is part of the Marketing Podcast Network. If you like what you're hearing, if we've made you smile, you can always listen free on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or whatever your favorite platform may be. And please take a moment and rate and review the podcast to help others find the show. Until next week, I'm Nick Westergaard, and I'll see you on the internet.